It is indeed happy to see Honourable Tandi back with us today. We were concerned about your health yesterday, but it's good to see you with us. Now, with regard to the question of the Guptas, if it is indeed something that is concerning to the Honourable Mania, then it's something that strangely even concerns the Honourable Ntembu, the Chief Whip of Parliament, because I see on Facebook he's made a few comments about the Guptas as well. So I don't think it's something that's peculiar to our colleague Honourable Mania, and in fact I raised a question about the Guptas yesterday in committee. So I think it's something that is fairly serious and the country as a whole is looking at. Honourable Chair, corruption in South Africa is endemic, and it makes for very fertile ground for money laundering and for financial terrorism. The Financial Intelligence Centre needs to play a role with suspicious transactions. These can only be dealt with if they are reported to it and if the person involved in these transactions can be identified. This leads to the very painful experience all of us, most of us being completely innocent of corruption, have to go through to be FICA'd with banks and others. South Africa is and has to be a part of the global economy and thus be able to trade internationally. To do this, international requirements for fighting corruption and financial crime in particular must be complied with. These include, amongst others, the United Nations Security Council resolutions on freezing of assets. One of the international requirements is an increased surveillance of politically exposed persons, PEPs. However, the South African bill refers to prominent influential persons, PIPs. Now, I'm not sure what PIP in the colloquial sense, but it sounds awfully like a guava pip or a nachi pip or something else, but it includes non-politicians and thus does not strictly comply with the international requirements. No matter who is included, this will mean that those who fall into this grouping will have to be super FICA'd. And yet, there is no definitive way for accountable institutions such as banks to identify who is or who is not a PIP. There can be no doubt that all politicians are PIPs. And it's something that perhaps one or two of our presiding officers will rule unparliamentary. However, we are PIPs, and so it will make the chances of politicians being exposed when they get involved in corruption far more likely. As always, the success of this bill lies in its application by both the FIC as well as the police and justice agencies. Time will tell whether this will happen. As to date, the FIC has received nearly 300,000 reports of suspicious transactions, and only very few have led to successful prosecutions. One amendment that did not find favour in committee was the scope of the bill to be restricted to national departments in place of organs of state. Organs of state has been retained, which means that even the Johannesburg Zoo is now included in the scope of the bill. The bill also deals with the Constitutional Court ruling that the warrantless searches allowed by the FIC Act were unconstitutional. This correction to the undermining of constitutional rights is a massive victory for all South Africans. Honourable Chair, let no one say that there are no costs associated with legislation such as this one. The loss of investment funds for the creation of new wealth, for economic growth, and for job creation is enormous. The DA therefore supports the changes from a rules-based approach to one based on risk analysis. This change can, if the accountable institutions themselves are not completely risk-averse, result in less costly and less onerous FICA burden on the majority of innocent South Africans. The FIC Act and this amendment suck resources into a bureaucracy and administration that has massive costs to be paid. The bottom line is that the FIC plays an important role in combating endemic corruption that we face in South Africa today.